One of the beautiful things about movie making is that every single era has a different vibe, style, and feel to it. After all, each era brings either new talent, voices, creators, technology, and more that can lend itself to a much different style of movie making. Not to mention, once certain blockbusters or classics arrive, many more people try to come forward and replicate what has been done with them. The 1960s were an interesting time in American and world culture. There were various big events going on, including the Summer of Love event that helped birth hippies and many styles of music. Film was also very popular in that period, but some of the best films weren't the highly lauded films you'd expect, but true hidden gems that deserve to be watched now and appreciated. We'll break such hidden gems down for you. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. 8. This Sporting Life. How about we start off this list with something that might seem classic at first, but is a true unraveling of a genre that we've honestly seen happen in the real world? Sports films are a classic genre, and when you base them on real tales, they are meant to inspire and show what can happen if you believe in yourself, trust in those around you, and push to the moon. In This Sporting Life, though, the film decides to make it clear that just because you can have fame and fortune in the sports world doesn't mean you'll have a life that is worth living. The movie focuses on a man who makes a successful transition between being a coal mine worker to being a rugby star. At first, it feels like a self-made man tale that we've seen in many sports classics. But the problem here is that our protagonist isn't a hero. He's a man who's spiraling in the worst of ways because despite having what many want, he's not getting what he wants. He wants to be truly loved, and so he tries to force a relationship with his landlady, but it goes horribly wrong. The movie is all about the intensity that the main character brings both on and off the field, and showing that energy and strength isn't enough to get what you want, and that made it resonate with those who were able to see it. While it may seem like a dark sports movie, it's more nuanced than that. We've seen various athletes from all manner of sport fall hard on their addictions and pains because they didn't have the true emotional depth to ask for the help that they needed. The protagonist is one example of that, thinking that his masculinity and pride are enough to carry him to what he wants, only realizing too late that he's ruined everything he tried to accomplish. 7. The Face of Another. Now let's jump into a movie that could honestly be an inspiration for various films that came after it, while also being something that could be retold in every single decade in a different way due to how it speaks to human nature and what we're willing to do when given the chance to be someone else. The Face of Another from 1966 follows the journey of a man who had an accident at a factor and loses his face, as in it's so damaged that he can't truly be himself anymore, and it weighs on his mind and emotions heavily. Then, one day, he meets a man who is able to give him a mask that'll act as his new face, and it's so realistic that he can be this new man, even though it's only meant to be a new face. What follows is a true character study that speaks to many different generations, because the man takes this opportunity to become someone else, and instead of just becoming a better version of the man he was, he becomes a monster. He basically manipulates his wife into falling in love with this new man and seeing how far she'll go with him. This is truly a descent into madness, and the film plays upon that perfectly, with not just the main character, but also another who was also disfigured on their face. The reason we mentioned that this speaks to many different generations is that this could be seen for how generations today hide behind the mask of the internet and social media to become different versions of themselves that are more powerful, more bold, and willing to say what they truly feel without consequence. Yet, as this movie proves, that's not really what happens, and who we are is more than just the skin we wear. 6. The Incident. Another classic movie trope is forcing an unlikely group of people together so that they can learn about one another and even expose who they are in some meaningful way. The Incident turns that on its head in one of the most chilling pieces to film you'll ever see. Seriously, this film is terrifying and menacing in an incredibly psychological way. It doesn't need a lot of violence and gore, it just needs a lot of people on a train cart. Indeed, that is the main setting for the film. In New York City, a train cart soon gets boarded by 17 very different people, and soon after, 2 young punks arrive. and everything changes. These two go through each person, one after another, and starts messing with them, torturing them in their own little ways. What made this film truly stunning was the realism in which the characters were played. The villains were very believable, and someone that you'd expect to meet randomly on a train one day. Just as important is that despite the punks being heavily outnumbered, no one stops the bullying as it happens to the other passengers. You'd think that someone, anyone, would have risen to the occasion to try and stop things, but they don't. And that's something that is very believable both then and now. It's none of my business, so why should I get involved? There's actually a term to define this, and it's called bystander syndrome. The incident plays that up in many ways, and by the end, you'll wonder if you'd have done the same thing they did, or if you would have had the courage to make a change. Ironically, despite it not being remembered that much, this was the debut film for Martin Sheen, and he would go on to have a lauded career in film and television. 5. The Pumpkin Eater. Wouldn't it be nice if this was just a film about a person liking to eat pumpkins? Sadly, we're not that lucky, and yet again, we find ourselves in a tale that is very important in today's modern world, as The Pumpkin Eater is about a woman who isn't allowed to have true control over her life and turns inward, becoming a cautionary tale of what happens when a woman is basically forced to be second in life to her husband, her kids, and everyone else around her. The movie focuses on Jo, a kind and average woman who has a big family, and yet it brings her nothing but pain. Her husband is cruel and unfaithful, and she's basically told that she must want more in regards to children and taking care of her family because that's simply how it is. You'd expect her to rebel, but it never happens. Instead, she just keeps pushing forward, even when each day is harder than the last. She mentally and emotionally unravels without having a breakdown in front of others. Then, when she does break, it's one of the most haunting and devastating things you'll ever experience. The movie doesn't shy away from the fact that this both is and was how women were treated. And when you fast forward to now, with women being told that they don't have rights over their bodies because men know better, you can see why this movie is one for any period, as women are much more than the labels that have been put on them by society. 4. If. No, we're not talking about that Imaginary Friend movie that came out a little while ago. We're talking about the 1968 film called If. Depending on what you watch or where you grew up, you likely know about the various boarding schools of the world where young men and women were sent to try and teach them about the world and proper manners because their parents didn't want them going to public schools for one reason or another. If takes place in one such British boarding school, but it's anything but a positive experience for the young man the film focuses on. He can see full well that the place is corrupt from the top down. The teaching is rigid and the punishments for nonconformity are severe. Then there are the upperclassmen who love nothing more than torturing the younger students until they are compliant. But our protagonist doesn't yield to them, and as time passes, the movie starts to break down in ways that make you question what you're really watching, including the movie going from full color one moment to being black and white the next. Even the film's final act is one that can leave you questioning what you saw as the students finally rise up and take the school in a revolution. But did it really happen? Or was it the dream that the main character had that he wished he could have done if he had the power to do so? This film was meant to show the dangers of being all about the past and preaching about the establishment instead of freedom. If you recall, the 60s were all about overthrowing the man and the grip they, the government, had on the lower classes. Sadly, while the message was clear, its impact hasn't been fully felt, making it something that should be watched so that we know that rising up is a true right of humanity when the time calls for it. 3. I Start Counting. Now here's a film that blends coming-of-age tales with murderous suspense in a way that one might not fully understand, but can empathize with. The movie focuses on a young teenage girl who must go live with an adopted foster family. When she gets there, she soon falls for her foster brother. But this is no true love story, as she starts to put together that he might be a serial killer that has been haunting the area. While she does try and figure things out, she always reverts into flat-out denial about what George may be because of what her feelings for him are. The character of Wynn is played beautifully and showcases all the many emotions that she's feeling as she tries to understand not only George, but herself. Is she just making it all up in her head? Or is she someone who is trying to figure out the truth, no matter how hard it may be to stomach? You'll have to watch the film yourself to figure out the answer. 2. The Servant. let's head back to a London setting to talk about another film that throws tropes about power out the window to deliver something dark and compelling. The Servant is about a young British man from a wealthy and powerful upper-class family who hires a man to be his servant. That's rather traditional at its core, right? Except while the servant is the obedient man that he's asked to be at first, as the film progresses, things start to change on both sides of the equation. Various acts are done by the servant to destabilize the master, and as such, over time, the balance of power shifts, and the servant becomes the dominant person in their relationship, and the master becomes a prisoner of sorts in the relationship that he himself started. The servant loves using powerful camera shots and tension to build things up and make you wonder how things are slowly unraveling with its characters. The performances truly drive things home, and it's a wonder to behold. Power is a truly subjective thing, and the servant makes it clear that it can be given and taken away without any threats or forceful coercion. It can just be drained away until you wonder what in the world happened to you. 1. The Trial. When you hear that The Trial was directed by the legendary Orson Welles, you might wonder how it's a hidden gem. But to be fair, Welles may have been a visionary, but there were many in Hollywood who were against him, and not all of his films hit the same way as Citizen Kane did. The twist with The Trial is that it's yet another example of the past informing the future. The movie forms around a man named Joseph K., who's a mere clerk, and then suddenly finds himself getting arrested. What was the crime he allegedly committed? No one is willing to tell him. So, you'd think that the movie would slowly unravel the mystery and tell Joseph and the audience what happened to set everything up, right? Wrong. Joseph never gets the answers he seeks, and as the movie goes on and he meets more people, he slowly finds himself getting pushed aside as though he is the true problem here and the system that is refusing to let him have a fair fight. Welles used his mastery of camera work to help make the world of the film seem dark, unyielding, and at times unending and mystical. And not unlike another film we talked about before, The Trial speaks to the woes that we're still dealing with in our society. Just look at the ends of 2025 where people are being arrested for nothing more than the color of their skin or the perception that they are a criminal instead of actually being one. Any fight for justice is mired in red tape, lies, and a system with corrupt individuals that want nothing more than to just do away with those they don't like to try and make it feel like the system is perfect when we all know it's not. Again, Orson Welles was a visionary, and many who have seen this film know exactly what he foresaw both then and now. And that's all from the movies and the 1960s hidden gems that many should have appreciated when they came out, but at least we're appreciating them now. Which of these hidden gems stood out to you the most, and which ones do you feel the urge to watch now that you know about them? Do you watch movies from the 1960s on occasion, and which ones are your favorites? Or do you know of other hidden gems that should have been put on this list? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.